Hey everybody, I'm Jeremy with the Charred Cask. I have an Instagram account focused on whiskey photography and product photography. Really excited that you guys are here.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
And I'm Bianca. I am the Scotch girl, and I focus on a mix of lifestyle with whiskey and really on building community, especially focusing on connecting with women and in Miami.
Today we're going to be talking Classic Laddie and their No Hidden Measures campaign and what Bruichladdich does to give complete transparency to their consumers on what's in their whiskey. But first, we'd love to get to know you guys a little bit more.
My name is Richard Allison, aka Root Bitters. My Instagram handle is Root Bitters. I focus on food and beverage, do some cocktail development, marketing, and some lifestyle stuff. Happy to be here as well.
Hi, I'm Heather. I'm from Better Living. My Instagram handle is @onbetterliving. We focus on food, travel, lifestyle, recipes, and yeah, it's so great to be here with you guys.
Hi, my name is May. I'm also known as May Take a Bite on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. I focus on food and craft beer. I'm very Miami. My focus is in Miami, and I don't know. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
being
all
here.
for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. So at this point, we're going to dive into the Bruichladdich website and we're going to show you guys what you guys can do with your bottles to get more information and really dive into their transparency core values.
I've never seen a website that is as informative.
Yeah, Bruichladdich has done a really, really good job at giving you so much information about what goes into their product. And they've been talking with us and wanting us to communicate that obviously to you guys. So do you know what's in your whiskey? That's a huge question that, you know, people sometimes ask, and a lot of companies are kind of hesitant to talk about what's in their whiskey, but Bruichladdich really focuses on giving all of that information to you as much as they possibly can. And some things, you know, they're not able to talk about, but really they give you an insane amount of information. Every bottle of Classic Laddie has a code on the back of it that you can enter in this site, and we'll do that in just a second. But it gives you a very detailed breakdown of all the different cask types. So for those who don't know, typically in a bottle of whiskey, unless it says a single barrel or a single cask, it is a blend of different cask types from their warehouse in order to get a consistent flavor. They don't worry as much about keeping that consistent profile as much as they do about experimenting, pushing the boundaries, and really giving a clear description of what they've put in there and what makes up those flavor profiles.
They're not so worried about every single bottle tastes in the same way, but they're worried more and focused more about sharing the information that's in there. And I think that's something that stands out tremendously about Bruichladdich. The why. Ooh, this is Adam Hannett, the head distiller, and he's really the one focused on making this happen, making this transparency campaign, no hidden measures. So why transparency? And repeating again what Jeremy mentioned, which I think is a great introduction to this. A lot of Scotch distilleries aim for absolute consistency. So here we're talking about every single bottle may not be consistent. So they're trying to make sure that they're not conventional and stepped out of that traditional way of thinking. So they want to trace ingredients from origin to bottling. Each component, whether barley province, so where the barley comes from, the area in Scotland, and the cask type, or the passing time will subtly influence our final recipes, their recipes. And through this, which we're going to find out when we do the code in this website, which I think is super exciting. Every recipe is broken down to give us as much information as we are legally allowed to give you. And that part is legally allowed is we're going to see a couple things that we're going to walk through that may not be able to be shared. You have the right to know what's in your glass and to understand what that flavor comes from. Without further ado, I'm going to click on the section of this website, which is going to help us reveal what's inside our bottles. So I'm going to look in the back of this bottle, and towards the bottom, I can see this code of 20-109. So I'm going to type it in here. Reveal the code. All right. So we see a bunch of information, which if it's the first time you're viewing this, it might be a lot. But then once you start digesting it and go down, it's broken down really, really great and gives you a lot of information. It's very relevant, especially to what we're going to be tasting and the flavor and the nosing process.
Let's have everyone just pour in their glass, since this might be the first pour for most bottles. Let's open your bottle and then just grab your glass and pour it in there. And then let's just let it kind of sit off to the side while we talk about this. That first pour sometimes can have a little bit of alcohol to it. So we want to let that kind of open up.
Is there like a certain amount that you should?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's about 1 to 2 ounces, depending on what your tasting is. For a Glencairn, it's usually, I pour right to where the bulb of the bottom of the glass is kind of starts to level, like taper out before it starts to curve back in. That's usually about a 2 ounce pour. Let's let that sit there. And then you might even start to kind of pick up some aromas just from the whiskey being in the air. Feel free as we're talking through this to kind of, nose your glass a little bit. And typically you kind of just give it, let me get on camera, a little tilt, and then just bring your nose gently to it. You can put your nose all the way in the glass if you want. You can smell it from a little farther away, and that's going to give you different scents that your nose will be able to pick up. If you open your mouth slightly when you do take a nose, then that'll allow oxygen to kind of come over your tongue, which also helps with your scents.
Try not to swirl it like you would for wine. This is 50% ABV. So this will knock you out if you like swirl it and then go in and try to nose it.
All right, cool. So we're going to dive into the casks that were used. And previously mentioned, we when I said that in the bottles, it's not just one cask unless it says single barrel or something on there. Typically, a distillery will take several casks from throughout the warehouse to blend into one release of a specific thing. So that number we entered, that 20-109, is this release of Classic Laddie.
And you can see that right here.
Right at the top. So you see it's the 2020 bottling, and then below is obviously everything that went into there. The first column, so the number of casks, that's going to tell you how many of those casks or barrels went into this specific blend. So we have 74 casks in this entire makeup of this release. We have 4 vintages, so 4 different years that are going in there, 3 different barley types, which is pretty cool because Bruichladdich is very transparent about where they get their barley and what barley goes into their products, and then 10 different cask types, which is absolutely insane. You can see in the very first one, the cask type is a sherry butt from Spain, then a US bourbon. So it's first aged in a sherry butt cask, and then put that same whiskey is drained from that and then put into a US bourbon barrel, which is really cool. And then a second fill barrel, and then a virgin oak. So you can see, like, it starts to get pretty intense. So each barrel that it goes into, it picks up these flavors. And Bruichladdich is constantly experimenting with all of this stuff so that they can pull these different flavors out. And then when they're ready to make the 2020 release of Classic Laddie, there was clearly something in this specific barrel. You can see they only used one of them that gave that really unique. I would have loved to try just like that single cask just to see what it was. But that one varies from even the second, the 5 casks that were used in the second thing there, which is the French Bordeaux casks, the Pessac,
Legnon
Cabernet. Not 100% familiar with that. So they have some really unique barrel types and cask types. So really, really cool.
Yeah, I wanted to mention something, which was kind of going back to talking about transparency, the legal component of what they're able to share. Even though they're trying to be transparent as possible, you'll see here that there's black boxes that are hiding the actual year of this cast, and some of them they're able to share, some of them they're not. Right? I think that shouldn't deter us from really seeing and appreciating how much information is actually shared on here.
So how about we start doing a little nosing before we dive too deep into the flavors that they have on there. I want to see what you guys are getting. So what scents are people starting to kind of pick up from smelling the whiskey?
Yeah.
I feel like I get a little bit of vanilla, maybe.
Yeah, I smell the vanilla.
I actually have a little bit more citrus.
I always from Bruichladdich get just a very florally fruity note personally.
Like brown sugar.
Brown sugar. Oh yeah.
You mentioned brown sugar. I'm actually picturing like a caramelized or cooked orange peel, like getting ready to prep for like some sort of dessert.
Yeah, like a stone fruit, something that kind of has that like really strong sweetness, like you're saying, like a brown sugar. Something, you know, that kind of pops in my head. I used to always cut peaches in half and sprinkle brown sugar and then bake them. And like that scent that comes out of the oven from that, oh, it's so good. But that's something, it immediately triggers that like memory for me of like making those desserts.
I'm also getting like a little bit of pepper, maybe.
Oh yeah.
Like, I don't know, mine's peppery.
So for the first sip, you kind of want to condition your palate a little bit. And so all you do is you take a sip and you just kind of let it roll over your tongue and then kind of swallow that down. So let it sit in there for, you know, a couple seconds, let it roll over your tongue, and then just a small sip just to kind of get your tongue ready. What?
I like to chew on it for like 10 seconds just to like make sure that like it goes all over.
All right, so that first sip, that's going to kind of, you should feel a little tingling on your tongue. Your taste buds are kind of like, it's a good amount of alcohol too in this, so it's, you know, it's kind of getting you ready. Now the second sip, take a little bit bigger of a sip, a little less time in the mouth, and then kind of swallow that one down.
That one to me always tells the true story.
now what are people getting?
It's getting like a lot of sweet notes, like caramel. Still like the brown sugar is really coming through, but very smooth. Like I get the stone fruit as well.
I mean, as I was smelling it and tasting it, I just think of like oak.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's the cast. That's you're getting that woody from the.
That's what I like. Yeah, that's what I've been like sensing.
I'm still getting the vanilla a little bit. I feel like I'm getting like a little bit of pear maybe, or something that's similar to that.
Yeah.
So maybe because I'm hungry, I'm getting a lot of dessert, honestly. I'm getting, and it's so funny because I never used to say this until I started drinking scotch. I'm getting, and really focusing on the notes, I'm getting a lot of marzipan on this, especially in the top of my tongue.
I'm getting a little bit of like apple on mine now as I continue drinking it.
And as you drink it, your palate will kind of open up to it and more. As you see, the less that gets in your glass and the more that evaporates, it's going to change the whiskey. And that's another thing that makes it fun to kind of just sit with a glass for a while and not just shoot it right down.
Right.
Is as you go, it's going to be completely different than what you started with.
It's going to evolve for sure. Nose the actual glass. Like when you tilt it, now they have a little bit more space. Nose the glass and you'll catch on a lot of those woody notes that May was talking about. They sit a lot in the glass, and that actually helps you really understand a little bit more about what you just tasted. As we were talking about, there are many factors that will contribute to the overall flavor of our single malt whiskey. Made up of simple ingredients, a few ingredients: barley, yeast, water, and aged in oak for at least 3 years. That's what we're consuming. So those vintages that we saw in our recipe, that is 4 different vintages, the youngest one could be 3 years. The oldest one, we don't know. And what that means is the youngest drop of liquid inside our bottles is at least 3 years. So while the age and cask type are often referred to as the most important signifiers, it's just here they're taking a more holistic view. There's so many other things that really impact our tasting experience. So on average, the classic Laddie is made up of 76 different casks. Ours, as you saw, was 74, and 4 vintages, which is in line, and 3 different barley types and 7 different cask types. All right. So let's talk about there's the barley, the cask, the thyme, and other. So there's different types of barleys. Here we're showing mainland barley, which is, let's see, this one right here. and then the Scottish Mainland Organic and the Isla. So important to know is Bruichladdich, as mentioned in the bottle, is in Isla, and it's an isle, and it's stated here. The other part, besides the barley, is the component is the casks. Here's a combination of bourbon barrels, but sherry butts, and hogsheads barrique. There's a little bit, the website goes into going into what bourbon barrels are used, the hogsheads and barriques, what that means, and the butts. So they're normally sherry, but they're also using different, very specific types of sherry casks, either ex Oloroso, ex Pedro Jimenez, normally referred to as PX. So that's kind of interesting to know, because they do really impact the tasting notes that you'll get from what we're drinking. So again, whiskey or Scotch, it's simple, but very also can be complicated in the sense of once you deep dive into these recipes and you learn how the combination of these things really impact the experience. So aging over time, there's a common conception in single malt whiskey that older is better. That's not the truth. And also the same thing as that blends are not good, when essentially even single malt whiskey, Scotch, is actually a blend. So they're owning up to that. They're saying, hey, maybe we have the youngest whiskeys or Scotch in this bottle, and they're a blend of different barrels and casks, but it's still good liquid that's in here, and it's good quality, and you're gonna love it. So, and we're gonna be transparent about it.
Absolutely.
Well, obviously in whiskey, I think the most important ingredient in whiskey and Scotch is water.
Yep.
And the yeast, and obviously the process. The process, besides what's written here, and if you get a chance to learn a bit more about the people behind the distillery, there's a lot of love and passion. I think that's the biggest process that's incorporated. That's probably not exactly mentioned here, but I want to lead with that.
I was just going to say, talking with the team has been pretty incredible. They have some folks who have hopped on calls with us to prepare us for talking to you guys and kind of spreading their message. And you can tell the passion that's in every single person we've talked to from Bruichladdich. They're so passionate, not only about the process and making the whiskey, but being transparent and creating a quality product and letting consumers know what's actually in there. And I think that just speaks volumes about who they are. They're not afraid to show you behind the curtain, this is what we're doing, because they're very confident in what they're doing, and they're doing it the right way. So that says a lot.
But actually something that when we make these comments, I actually want to know about your whiskey experience. I mean, May has shared that she isn't too familiar with whiskey tastings. Is new to it. But can we go around the room talking about what you thought about this process? And also before this, have you attended any other whiskey tastings? Do you drink whiskey? We'll start with May, since I put her on the spot.
I want to say I did a whiskey tasting in Chicago, but that was just for fun. It wasn't really serious. I didn't have anyone explain to me anything. It was just like a deal that they had at the restaurant. So for real, this is the first time that I have a whiskey tasting with explanations, and I'm actually able to tell you what it is that I sensed, even though I know nothing about this. So
but
I don't know.
Right? It's your experience, so so there's no right or wrong answers. You did well.
Yeah. Well, thank you. But I thought this was fun.
So Heather, would you like to share your experience?
Yeah, I have even less experience than May, because she had the restaurant. That was fun for her, and I wish I had the same thing. But no, this is my first whiskey tasting, which I think has been amazing. And I've done tequila tastings before, but this is definitely my first whiskey only tasting. And yeah, I think the only thing I wanted to mention is that we were talking about the smell and the flavor, and obviously like the way it tasted, but I think the way it looks in the glass is also really kind of unique. It's kind of got this like viscous thing going on in the light that it kind of swirls around in the glass, and it's, I don't know, it's just really cool. Just the other thing to mention, but yeah. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, this is my first whiskey tasting.
Richard, would love to learn about your whiskey experience.
Yeah, so I have some experience with some whiskey tastings and visiting some distilleries, and just enjoying it at home or on the road. But I think like my favorite part, taking like cocktails out of it, is just kind of having a relationship with the whiskey in the glass on its own, and having it kind of just develop in your on your palate, and creating that relationship, and just learning the history about the brand is really cool as well, and kind of what goes into it, and all the history. So, but it's really cool, especially this time of the year when things start to cool down a little bit. You get a nice warm glass of whiskey, and warms
That's
up the
true.
heart. So, cheers.
Awesome. Thank you. Cheers. So I think it's been really great having each and every one of you included in this experience. And there's no, like, again, there's when with tasting whiskey, there's no right or wrong answers, right? Each one of us come into this with different views on life, different approaches to different things, different cultures, different parts of the country, as we saw. So we all will taste things very differently, maybe very similarly, but we don't know also, because that's how we communicate it. And one of the things also that has been a big part of this experience, especially, is that Bruichladdich offers that extra level of, okay, so we're going to connect what we're actually nosing and tasting individually, but let's see how their ingredients are a part of this process. And I love the fact they share this in the website and they share it in their bottles, full transparency. And that's very unique.
Yeah, it is. It is very unique for a distillery, and like Bianca was saying, it's really nice. Just like people when they're eating a diet or want to know what's going into their bodies. I mean, we want to know what's going into our whiskey and what we're consuming, and they do everything they possibly can to give that to their consumers. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, hopefully you learned something, and hopefully you guys will kind of sit with your bottles a little bit more. This doesn't have to be the last time, so definitely enjoy. And yeah, thank you again for joining.